Welcome back to another episode of Picking Up the Pixels RPG Love. I'm your host, Boston, and joining me as always is my good friend Musim.
Hello.
Patreon.com/E1M1. The ones are numbers. If you want to support us financially over there, the $5 a month tier is the recommended one. That gets you all the early access, behind the scenes, kind of uncensored, exclusive audio over there. And your financial support helps a ton. It means I don't have to worry about paying for hosting these shows, because that stuff isn't cheap. It is. We don't talk a lot about the behind the scenes stuff, but I don't use one of those hosts that like automatically injects ads or anything like that for free hosting or anything. So the hosting can be pretty expensive. So any financial support over there helps a ton. Patreon.com/E1M1. The ones are numbers. Like I talk about on TVGP, if you can't support us financially, totally understand. So the best way to help a show like this, or anything you kind of listen to or watch or enjoy on the internet, is to share it on social media, tell your friends. Word of mouth is a huge, huge help for every single show, no matter how big or small. Helps a lot if the shows are smaller. But all that stuff helps a ton, and we appreciate it. Also, quick plug for the YouTube channel. It's on the right hand side of the page. We don't broadcast this live anymore, but we do record a video version, and that does go up on the YouTube channel. So if you want to see our beautiful faces alongside hear our our RPG opinions, and go check it out over there. Musim, what have you been playing this past month?
I have been playing Find Time to Play games.
That old chestnut.
Yeah. No, I had a couple Best Buy reward certificates. Not enough to justify this purchase, but I did anyway, and I got Vampire the Masquerade Swansong.
Oh, right.
I was just too deathly curious about it. Like, I went in with the expectation that this was going to be like a B or C tier game, and that's fairly accurate.
Okay.
While, like, the environments look good, like they aren't, like, they don't really feel lived in, you know, the facial animations are very stiff and limited. The voice acting is not great. Like, so you got to go in expecting kind of almost a last generation experience on that end. But
okay.
The gameplay I am just immensely fascinated by. I'm terrible at it so far, but
okay.
It's kind of honestly, it's a series of like crime investigations kind of deal.
Okay.
The game starts and the prince, right? This is Vampire the Masquerade, so you get vampire clans, all with different powers and things like that. So the prince is called for a code red. That's wrong. It's a red something. And it takes a while for them to kind of inform you of what that means. But you are 3 different characters that you just play one at a time, and the game will automatically switch you to them. And every scene is you investigating that scene and questioning people.
Okay.
So in that fashion, it kind of operates like a point-and-click adventure game with a dialogue tree. But the more interesting part is they just took the mechanics from the actual paper and pencil RPG, you know, like we talked about here a month or two ago, and you get like your character sheet with your different stats and different power trees and whatnot to go down.
Oh, nice.
It doesn't do a good job at like kind of explaining what character would be good for what, so I'm about as mismatched as you can be right now.
Okay.
But like one of the characters is a Malkavian, and she's like the 3rd one you get. And I didn't realize that was a thing because I gave the Malkavian tree to a Toreador that you start as.
Okay.
The tree being like one of the trees kind of focuses on you having visions, which is the Malkavian's whole shtick. And oh well,
right.
Like the Ventru guy, like I wasn't even really paying attention to what clan these characters were. Otherwise, I might have chosen better. The Ventru guy just looks like this stiff, like serious guy. So he struck me like a bodyguard. So I spec'd him out to be physical, but Ventru are very, they're the high society talky types.
Oh,
So,
sure. Okay.
and it's long enough into the game that I'm not going to restart. I'm just going to live with all my failures.
Right. Do they, at this point in the game, do they seem like this kind of mismatched skill tree is going to be something that is a failure, or does it seem like it will be kind of maybe strengthening that clan's innate weaknesses?
So, like, after you pick out your initial, this will be a long way to answer your question.
Okay.
We'll get there. When you, like, it starts out and you pick kind of an archetype, and then after that you can put your level up points wherever you want.
Oh, okay.
So, like, I've been, like, it's really cheap to get most of the starter, like, intimidation, persuade, whatnot skills. It's
You're
like
kind of
usually,
like base level skills.
yeah. So I've been giving that to everyone. Unfortunately, like, they don't seem to be able to use that stuff a lot.
Oh, okay.
I think I'm on the third or fourth scene with all the characters. And you have a level up after every scene. The first scene, I think I failed every single vampire power attempt I did.
Okay.
And the story kept going. So,
Okay.
and I assume because it's letting me still play that I have not irrevocably destroyed the story.
Right. It's not like the old King Quest games where you get to the end and you're like, well, you failed chapter 1, so play again to get the true ending, or like the ending. It's like, no.
I think, like, it tries to explain a lot of this stuff at the beginning, but I just was not getting what it was trying to communicate. And then once you get it in action, like, you have several buttons that are like, okay, this button gives you, like a Arkham Asylum style investigation view, and
okay.
This button lets you see places that you can kind of do your vampire quick teleport over to this ledge type thing. And, I am still getting used to what buttons are where, and I just recently discovered that, like, before in the dialogue trees, you get 4 or 5 dialogue choices, and it's like, be like, this person says this, in parentheses it'd say like persuasion, and then you could put like willpower points into that. And I just today realized, while I'm on the third or fourth scene with everyone, that I can press another button and there are more vampire powers out to the side. So,
oh wow, okay.
I'm hoping I don't start over, but in 1 or 2 more scenes I might.
Well, and I wonder how long it is, because I wonder if it's one of those things where you're meant to do kind of multiple quick playthroughs to get the ending that you're angling for. Maybe it's like a quick kind of like 8 to 10 hour thing. It's like, oh, okay, well, now that I know, all right, this first case, this character will do these things, and now I know how to kind of min-max my powers, because that's, we like kind of the B tier games. We say that with a lot of affection, not a lot of derision. But if there's one thing that those games typically fail on, it's tutorialization.
Yeah.
And that's, it's kind of a bummer. It's kind of fun though when you figure out something halfway through the game where you're like, oh, that's, oh, all right, I gotta play through this again. I can really cheese the beginning of this game, but it'd be a little frustrating.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what I'm going to wind up doing. Is I think I'm just going to beat the game, however long it is, and then go back through with intention.
Right.
One really cool thing they do is at the end of each scene, they display your choices, and then they'll say, like, okay, so I was investigating an apartment where this dude was beheaded, for instance. And at the end of the scene, it like showed me all my choices, and then it has a column that says, this is also what you could have done but didn't. And it's like,
oh, interesting.
There was a secret room in this apartment. And like, I knew about the secret room. I just gave up about finding it.
Well, that's interesting, because I feel like we like the Life is Strange games a lot. And at the end of each one of those chapters, it's like, well, here's the decision you made, and here's the percentages of the community that made the other decisions. So sometimes it's like, you made the 3% choice, you monster. 97% of other players chose this other one. It's like, ugh, boy. But I like that kind of twist of it, where it's like, all right, here's the things you did, but you know, you could have found the secret room. You could have found the code on, you know, inside the fridge or the computer and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's
And
neat.
like the other thing they have it stacked in a way I like in terms of scenes. Like the first scene I completed and it gave me that list. Like the only thing I couldn't have done was literally an A or B choice in a conversation I had.
Oh, okay.
And then like the next scene was like, oh, I actually did miss something. And it's been kind of going that way.
That's cool.
I do wish the game had like an in-game map. I keep forgetting where things are.
Right.
You there's no running in this game. You're walking at a very slow pace, and all the environments are fairly large. Like they're not like Okay, poor Xenoblade. You're just gonna forever be my
get him again.
my punching bag. They're not Xenoblade large by any means, but they are large enough to where if you're in one room and you think you have to go back to the other side of the map for something, you may just be like, well, I missed that.
Right. It's not happening.
Yeah. The main characters are pretty neat, and they have a really good codex in it. So, like one of the levels I just completed, the character was put in. Let me vaguely talk about this. They were put in an area where they had to relive some memories, right? And as you relive the memory, like you'll get like a brief scene from it to get an idea of it. But if you go and read their bio and like the codex, you get like a pretty detailed, like, oh, this is the events that led to that, and this is what happened after that.
That's cool.
It's really neat. I don't know if I can, like, I think the game came out at like $50 if you buy the non-special edition. I'm not sure, unless you're just like me, I don't think I can recommend it at that price point, but I think it would, so far, right now, I think it would be an excellent $20 or $30 buy whenever it gets there.
Yeah, and I just looked at how long to beat, and it said most people finish kind of the main story in about 14 hours. So
okay, that's not
too bad. Yeah, that's like Chrono Trigger length. You know, that's a pretty good like quick RPG.
Yeah, and I like that it's all like there's no combat in it. It's all talking, and
that's why I've been so interested in it. Is I kind of like let's be generous, the World of Darkness games have never been great about combat in kind of any iteration of them. So I really like the idea of... I have also been playing a World of Darkness game that I'll talk about in my section. But I like the idea of playing to the pen and paper roots strengths, where it's like, yes, this is a game where it's conversation, it's influence, it is using your kind of vampiric powers to make these things go your way. Like, I think that's way more interesting than, all right, get the claws out, claws and fangs, let's go. You know, I don't think that's as interesting.
Absolutely. And I cannot understate how much I like investigating the crime scenes. Like, they leave, like, it's not a perfect, like, execution mechanically, because sometimes you are almost doing like, they identify things you can interact with a little white dot that kind of has a little glow to it. But you can only see it if you get close to something and if you get kind of your viewing range. And it is glitched on me a few times where there's something I could interact with and it wasn't showing up.
You weren't in the right like position or head height or something.
Like I had to leave the room and come back, I think, in several of those
I'll be right back. Don't worry.
But it's... Gosh, like particularly the apartment one where the guy was beheaded. There is so much information you can glean that the game doesn't outright tell you.
That's cool.
In a lot of these conversation games, like it's more of almost a mechanical, like, well, if you choose all these decisions and you interact with this, then the right choice will show up and you don't actually have to have...
your character goes, I see, and like it puts it all together, and it's like, this is the killer. It's like, no, you gotta figure it out, man.
Yeah, like there's a little bit of that in this game, but for the most part, like there are huge amount of like logical trails you're going to miss out on if you don't pay attention to a lot of this stuff.
Cool. I've had my eye on this game for a while because I think there was in previews there was some frustration about like, well, it's not combat. Like I'm just talking to people and like solving mysteries, and I'm like, yeah, Yeah, let's do. Yes, let's go. This is for me.
Yeah, like honestly, it's pretty great. Like I like the character designs. Like the voice acting is definitely going to turn some people off. Like
Yeah.
the Malkavian has a little girl that follows her around that has one of the worst voice actors I've ever heard in my
Oh
life.
no.
Um, and like a lot of the non-main cast, their voice actors are much weaker, but the main
Sure.
voice cast I think are mostly serviceable. The the facial animations are definitely going to turn some people off. Like this is like
Yeah.
Bethesda does better facial animations.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it's not great, but like they very clearly set out to make like you can tell this is a game on a budget and they spent their budget on very specific things.
Right.
And I hope they make enough money to make a slightly higher budget sequel because I think they're onto something here, you know.
Yeah. It seems like it.
Um, anyway, I will keep playing that and talk about it more next month. And then I downloaded and started Shadowrun Returns.
Hey, me too.
So I barely played this because I bought it on Switch, and you cannot increase the text size of the screen on the handheld mode of the Switch.
Youch.
And so I like made the character, and then I was like, what class have I not played before? And I've chose the I just forgot what they're called. Is it the shaman, the summoner type?
Yeah, I bounced off that description almost immediately because it reads as very spiritual, and I was just like, that's not the type of class or
Yeah.
character I'm gonna play in this game.
Well, that's good because it tells you almost nothing about what like it should like particularly for that class it should give you about advice how to allocate your points in that
Right.
skill tree and
Right.
like your initial instinct when you see it is, oh, I'm just going to increase the skill tree, and you don't realize that, oh no, I have to buy these individual skills that are already unlocked for me to buy.
Yeah, it's a wild skill tree in that like you can only buy. So if anyone hasn't played it, there's like 6 or 7 categories that you can spend your karma points in, and there are 2 main sections. One is like if you're in the intelligence tree, the big bar at the top is just intelligence, and for every node you need that number of karma points. So if you're going to spend into the 3rd node, you need 3. In the 4th node, you need 4. So it becomes incredibly expensive, not in a bad way, to invest in there. But what they don't explain super well off the bat is that all of the skills underneath the main kind of row there, you can only buy the skills that are underneath like the top row. So if you've invested into the 3rd PIP in intelligence, you can only buy the first 3 skills in each of the rows underneath it.
Yeah.
So it makes sense because like if you're going to invest in a tree, you really have to want to invest into that tree completely so you can get all the stuff. So like I'm playing as whatever the drone class is called.
Oh, the
Like Rigger or something.
Rigger, yeah.
Because that was just like, you can equip drones and have them be your little buddy, and I was like, that is 100% me. So for that one, that's the intelligence tree, and like I've invested a couple of points in the top so far, and then a handful of kind of smattering points underneath where it's like, oh, you can equip a different type of drone. Now I can equip 2 drones at a time, and you can increase not only your stats but the drone stats as well. So investing, it seems like getting deeper into your tree, kind of inherently min-maxing, seems to pay dividends really well, as opposed to like now you have plus 0.3 accuracy. It's like, well, I'm not going to spend 17 karma points to get into that skill tree. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So
Yeah. So I don't have much more to say about this game, but I'm infinitely interested. Like, what do you think so far? How far are you into it?
So I have gotten through what I have to assume is kind of the prologue. I have you do like a couple of quick missions at the beginning. You're trying to find out who killed your friend Sam, I think his name is. Um, they have like a flashback scene where it's like 3 years ago, you get double crossed, and you have this kind of like tutorial battle scene. I have rescued a lady named Coyote, and I've gotten access to the kind of underground area of the Seamstresses Union, which kind of seems like the end of the kind of tutorial area. Man, I'm really digging it.
Nice.
I have this. I took your advice from, we've been talking about it for the last couple of months on here. I took your advice and I put it on the easiest difficulty to start with because you can tell pretty quickly after you start this game that this isn't a negative, but it did not have a large budget.
Right.
So there's a lot of tutorials, and the fighting is okay. I mean, it's like a no cover, half cover, full cover XCOM sort of thing. Controlling it on a controller is really good when you're kind of like walking around and investigating stuff. In the battle system, it's a little initially confusing because to switch between the different weapons you have equipped, you hit L1, and then to switch between different, like, for my character class, like switching between the drone and the items you're carrying and stuff like that is on R1. And that was initially a little confusing until I got my brain kind of wrapped around it. And I wish the game not forced you to, but really reminded you maybe in the first couple of battles of like, hey, you should probably turn your drone on so that you can control both you and your drone to do things.
Right.
Is at the beginning, they give you a big warning that's like, hey, you can control your drone, but that's going to take 1 AP away from you. And it's like, well, that's fine because my drone has like a sniper rifle attached to it, and that does some real good work. So like that's a trade-off I'm willing to take. But once you get over the kind of the initial hump, I think it's really good. The writing feels really solid. I like a lot of the characters you run into, especially the overly cheery, the guy that works at the morgue. He's really good. The battle system is pretty good. I like that it feels like a pretty focused experience. Like you're going from one location to another. It's not really like, oh, here's your world map you're picking. It's just like, no, you exit this area, you go to Seattle, and now you're doing this thing, and you exit this area, and you're going to Portland and doing this thing. So it's not. I think my only, not criticism, but the thing that I think is the most interesting, the thing that I like that maybe might not click with a lot of people is nearly every conversation you have has multiple decisions to make in it, and I think on the outside, if you're not treating it like a role-playing game, those decisions don't seem to matter. But I think for me, I'm trying to roleplay as this like helpful drone hacker character, so I'm trying to be nice to a bunch of people because I feel like that's kind of a rare thing in the Shadowrun world. And I'm not entirely sure if that pays any dividends or not, but I kind of like playing a character. And there are pretty clear, we were just talking about it in Swansong, there are very clear options where it's like, this one requires a level 5 or higher in hacking. This one requires 4 or higher in strength. So like all of that stuff is locked out for me because my character is, 100% intelligence at this point. But I think I've played about 2 hours or so. And I like it a whole lot. I think it's that kind of combination of the kind of grid-based strategy stuff that I really like, you know, the cover-based stuff. And combined with a pretty well-written, cool RPG stuff. You know, it's that long-form kind of descriptive computer RPG stuff that we don't always get on PC, which is nice.
Yeah. You know, it's been years since I played this, and you know, I probably should mention I am a Kickstarter backer of all three of these games.
Oh, right.
Just for transparency, but that was like a decade ago, man.
That was a while ago, yeah.
The from what I remember, the first game is fairly linear in
Yeah.
execution, and there are very few like I think they have some side quests you can do.
I've done a couple. It's largely like if you're on your way to your, like, oh, go investigate this murder site, and you're on the way and there's like a dude with a speech bubble above his head, and it's like, all right, well, if you just go down the alley that he's in, kill a couple dudes, and then come back, that's your side quest. Like, it's not really which is okay. I mean, that's it's certainly not a negative, but it's not like, lo and verily, go to this other kingdom. It's like, nah, man, just go down that hallway and, like, beat up those guys and bring me back my fruit. It's like, all right, I can do that.
Yeah, like, I don't remember the ending to the first one, but the next two games, like, they never reach, like, they never do, like, huge deviations, but I know for a fact, like, Dragonfall and I'm pretty sure Hong Kong both have different endings you can get dependent on like I think they may have a faction or two in those games.
Oh, okay.
That may be slight. Like it's probably not like explicitly a faction. It's more just you can go with this character, or you can help this character, or you can help that one.
Right.
But they're like Returns is very much harebrained schemes, making kind of the tools and the mechanics for everything.
Yeah, and like and then, showing like this is the thing we want to make. Like,
yeah,
we did the thing.
And the next two games, like it still happens within mostly the same mechanics. Like they eventually redo like the hacking system, and
yeah, I haven't even run into any of that.
It's not great.
Yeah,
it's those. I suspect even on easy, those fights will try your patience for the game, but we'll see.
Right.
I'm hoping I make it sound negative enough that when you get there, you're like, well, it wasn't that bad.
Right. Well, I haven't even picked up like a deck. Is that what the hacking like keyboard things are called? I had the opportunity to buy the first one, and I wasn't able to buy it yet before I needed to go like stop playing the game for the day. So it's probably like the next thing that I'll be picking up is one of those things.
Yeah, well, and you'll eventually get a hacking teammate that'll have the option to do it for you. Like in all the games, you kind of get, I believe, one of each class.
Okay, because I'm so early that I've had like I think maybe 2 kind of temporary teammates. Like I just did a mission with Paco, who's like one of the gang members who was helping me save Coyote. There was actually something kind of neat in that mission that I like when RPGs did this. Like you were trying to hack into Coyote's computer to see where she was going. She'd been missing for 2 days. And like around her room, you found a receipt for zebra meat in like some meat stall downtown. And eventually you run across there, and I had like charmed my way in that conversation to say like, hey, by the way, do you still have the meat for this receipt? Like, I'm here to pick it up. And they gave it to me, and then I was able to use that to kind of soothe a bunch of dogs in the next mission. So I only had to fight like half of the enemy units that I normally would. And I was like, all right, like that's not the biggest thing, but I like when RPGs do that, where it's like you kind of exhausted every option and you get some cool benefits out of it.
Yeah, they do pretty good about most of the things you find in these games you can use for something.
Yeah.
And they do, like in Hong Kong at least, like there's one team member like you can just straight out kill instead of recruiting.
Oh wow, interesting.
But anyway, like this, I don't know that the tutorializing gets any better, and I have no idea if the controller controls get better because I played on mouse and
Yeah,
keyboard initially.
I'm pretty happy with the controller support so far. It's direct control for your character, so left stick just walks your character around the screen as opposed to like click and then go there. It does present some frustrations, at least in the first game, because the amount of space your character takes up on screen feels bigger than you should be like able to walk around at this light pole or something, and you kind of keep bonking on it while you're trying to walk past. But the thing I do like is that the right stick pans the camera around, so it's really easy to say, like, someone's like, oh, go down this hallway and go do this thing. You just pan your camera down and be like, oh, okay, they genuinely are over here and down that way. All right, so I'm not gonna waste my time hoofing it somewhere I don't need to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really cool. I'm this will probably be the game I kind of take pretty slowly, because I like reading everything. I'm like having a fun time exploring everything in the environment. But I'm having a blast so far. It's really good.
Yeah. And I guess just to mention it for the audience, like Shadowrun, the paper and pencil RPG, came out in like the 80s or early 90s. And it is a degree of sci-fi that is very much like, you know, it aped Neuromancer stuff back in the day and some token stuff. So like, just keep in mind, this came out before the Matrix.
Yeah, like when they're saying like we're gonna jack into the Matrix to hack stuff, like that was well before, like decades before the Matrix.
I think Rigger's probably my favorite class out of everything.
Okay.
It is so much fun controlling the drones. So I think I can't remember what it maxes out in this game. I know in later games I think you can get like 3 of them or something like that.
Oh, wow.
But they get much more interesting varieties of drones later games, but it's still, I think it's still a blast using them.
Yeah, it's such a cool idea that when I read it, I was like, all right, I gotta try, even if it's not like, you know, the like Risk of Rain or The Division, where it's like I have a little buddy flying around behind me. Like even if it's not that, like I'm still gonna try it because that sounds like something you don't get to play something like that in RPGs very often.
Yeah.
Well,
cool. So that's all I've been playing. So what else you got, Boston?
The Final Fantasy V 4-job Fiesta has started. We are at that time of year again. I am. I guess if anyone hasn't heard of this by this point, I think this is my 11th year running the Fiesta. I think it started around 2010. I don't know if I did the first year or not. So this is where you go through and you run and you get 1 job per crystal in Final Fantasy V. I normally, historically, haven't recommended the 4-job Fiesta as a way to start playing Final Fantasy V, but someone wrote a really great post, I don't remember where, I think it might have been Reddit, actually recommending it, because there are so many jobs and there's so many like combinations of skills and everything in Final Fantasy V that some players can feel a little bit paralyzed by those choices. So the Fiesta is a really good way of saying, here are your 4 jobs. Worry about kind of mastering and using those. Don't worry about anything else. So you can kind of have a more focused experience playing through the game. So I thought that was a pretty good point that they rose. But because of how I am, I'm doing super hard runs because I've been playing Final Fantasy V for 20-something years by this point. So my first run, I did a Chaos Berserker Risk run. To explain, Berserker Risk is you can register for the event before the event starts. Berserker Risk is one of the kind of hard mode twists you can put on there, where having 1 Berserker on your team is fine. You can kind of work around it. Having more than 1 quickly turns into a disaster. So Berserker Risk means that you could potentially get up to 4 Berserkers on your team. I only had 1 this year, which I lucked out. I've not been that lucky in previous years. And Chaos just means you can get any job at any crystal. So, like for this run, I was in a really bad spot for a really long time until I got my jobs. So my jobs were Samurai, Berserker, Geomancer, Ninja, which, for anyone that maybe does the Fiesta, is probably reeling at that reveal same way I did, which means that until the Water Crystal, I was able to use freelancers, which are just kind of like unjobbed characters. But as soon as I beat the Water Crystal, I had to use 4 Berserkers for a very long time until I was able to get my next class. So that made a whole bunch of bosses really, really difficult. And I had to grind a whole lot to get to the point where I could take out some of those bosses by sheer luck. Once I did that, that run went really, really well all the way up until the final boss, and that was a nail-biter. That's probably one of the closest final boss fights I've ever had in Final Fantasy V. I did forget to mention, I am playing the Pixel Remaster version for the first time. It is really good. I think if I was pressed, I'd probably put the Game Boy Advance version above this one just a smidge. But this one does have auto battle on it, which is a huge help for this game. And by auto battle, I don't mean that it just picks fight for all 4 characters and it goes. It remembers the last thing you did, and that kind of automates all that stuff and fast forwards through the battles too. So it is very, very, very handy. So that was the first run I did. I'm in the middle of my second run now. I'm doing the brand new... I apologize. This is going to take a little bit of explanation. It's a 375 run. There's sort of infamously 2 runs called a 750 run or a no 750 run. Essentially what that is a 750 run is magic-based classes that can break rods. So you're going to, like, White Mage, Black Mage, Mystic Knight, like all your kind of magic-based class are 750 classes. No 750 are all of the non-magic classes. So a 375 run gets you 2 of each. So it gets you 2 magic classes and 2 non-magic classes. So the 375 run I have, hilariously, is White Mage, Mystic Knight, Bard, and Samurai, which is essentially pretty much the 4 strongest classes you can get in this entire game. So I'm expecting to have 0 problems running through this entire run, especially because I have Bard. As a quick fun thing, I know I'm getting super inside baseball on Final Fantasy V, I'm sorry. The last spell that Bards can learn boosts your character level. So if you go into, say, the final boss fight, which is a very long boss fight at, say, level 30, the longer that the bards sing that song, the higher your levels get.
Oh, wow.
So you start off at level 30, a couple of turns later, you're level 40. And then a couple turns after that, you're level 75. On the Super NES version, your levels max out at 99. In every version after that, they max out at 255. So you can go in at level 30 and kind of like turtle up for a couple of turns and then start fighting the boss like normal. And by the time you get to the second boss phase, you're at like level 125 and you're just destroying the boss. It is very satisfying. So don't listen to anybody that tells you Bard is the worst. It's not. It's way overpowered. So man, I love Final Fantasy V. I look forward to the Fiesta every year. I did 5 runs last year. I'm going to try and do a couple of different runs that I normally don't do this year, like the 375 one. I'm going to try and do the hidden run as well. There's a secret run you can do that I've never done. I won't spoil it here. But I'm excited. I don't play Final Fantasy V except for the Fiesta, and then every time it comes around I go, yeah, if I could play some Final Fantasy V, why not? Sure, I could do that. So 4Job Fiesta is running right now at 4jobfiesta.com. Go sign up. It's way easier to sign up now. You do need a Twitter account, don't forget. You can just create a burner account for it. You don't actually have to use Twitter, but you will need an account to interact with the website. Next up, Destiny 2. We're like 1 month done with the season here, the brand new season. Season of the Haunted. It's going very well. We're getting a lot of big story beats here that are going pretty nicely. We're getting a lot of nice backstory and history for a lot of the kind of the main players here in Destiny. A lot of the storyline this season is dealing with all of the emotional baggage and damage one might carry along with them if they have lived for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And then how do you kind of start working through some of that as your enemy weaponizes that sort of stuff against you, which is has been pretty interesting. But Destiny 2 continues to be great. Still recommend people check it out and play it. Not much else to talk about there. We already talked about Shadowrun Returns. Last game I played this week, Werewolf, the Apocalypse, Heart of the Forest, which is one of the many Werewolf games out there. This is not Earthblood, which is the one that I think most people know about. That's like the third-person action hack-and-slash thing. This is the character sheet-based visual novel. I have been keeping an eye out for this one ever since on Game Club we played Vampire the Masquerade Coteries of New York. And if anyone hasn't listened to that over on TVGP, you really should go listen to that, because it's an incredible game that manages to trip over itself and like fall off a cliff in like literally the last 5 minutes of the game, and like blows itself out of the water. Like it's so impressive to see a game just implode all at once. It's wild. So when that came out and we played that, I was just like, man, I really like what this game was going for. It kind of didn't get there. I think some of our frustrations for that were, it was really hard to tell, like when the hunger was ramping up and building, it was sort of hard to say, like, well, how close am I to anything? Like that, it felt a little kind of nebulous. That's not really a problem in Heart of the Forest, because you have a full character sheet. So it has your name, it has your health, your rage, and then the third stat. Whatever the third stat is. I'll try and look up a screenshot here in a minute. I really appreciate that it has that, and then it has 5 kind of overall stats beyond that. And you go through almost like an ogre battle kind of decision tree at the beginning of the game, where it's like, you know, you awake in the middle of a forest and your fangs are gleaming. What do you do? It's like, yeah, man, let's get into it. Let's get into some pen and paper business. So you sort of, at the very beginning, you go through as your character is kind of dreaming on a bus ride to the middle of nowhere in Europe. You're kind of figuring out what kind of werewolf you want to be, like what character you want to be. And so far I'm largely kind of this calmer, more like look before you leap kind of werewolf, which the game every once in a while will be like, I don't know about that. I don't know if that's, we'll see if this works out. Not in like a judgy way, but just sort of it almost seems like the werewolf is kind of judging you a little bit. Like, not necessarily that the game is. But one thing that I really like that it does is it very clearly will tell you, if you go, here's a giant couple of paragraphs of text, and here's like, unlike Coteries of New York where the text is displayed on the bottom, the text displays on the left-hand side of the screen in kind of a large multi-paragraph format, and there's a big piece of art on the right-hand side of the screen that evolves as the text displays on the left side, which is really pretty interesting. But you'll get this whole bunch of text, and then you'll have a couple of options. It does a really, really good job of like, here's the calm option, here's the middle ground, and here's like an aggressive option. And if you pick the calm one, it has like a claw icon with a minus next to it, and it says rage down. So if you pick that one, you're going to calm down a little bit. If you pick the normal one, nothing's really going to happen. And then if you pick the really aggressive one, then your rage is going to be really kind of ramp up as you go through. So it's kind of nice to see, especially after Coteries of New York, it's really nice to see very clearly, like, these are the things that's going to happen based on your choices. Like, it doesn't tell you from a story perspective, but it does tell you from kind of a character building perspective. I just looked up the interface here. You have rage, willpower, and health. Okay. So you kind of, those are kind of your three main things. I haven't played a ton of this yet. I think I'm probably maybe about an hour in, because it was just on sale here on PS5. But so far it seems pretty cool, and kind of seems like more of the thing that I wanted Coteries of New York to be. And I very much like Shadowrun Returns. I don't have much experience, if any, with the Werewolf the Apocalypse stuff. So I'm kind of curious to see if this is a World of Darkness thing that I kind of click with, because I think I like the Vampire the Masquerade stuff pretty okay. But we'll see if we'll see how the werewolf stuff goes. But seems cool so far.
I feel like World of Darkness, like, they have so much cool lore that they have made up and put into this game with all the different clans and werewolves and mages and everything. But for some reason, and I think it's kind of the volatility of the company that makes World of Darkness, and hopefully that gets better now with I think it's Paradox who bought them.
I think so, yeah.
But it's things that, you know, every vampire movie of the last 20 years is ripped off.
Yep.
Like, and I would, gosh, there's no reason why this shouldn't make some really freaking cool games. So I have high hopes for this werewolf game you're playing. And I have some hope for the game I'm playing. And honestly, I even have hopes for the sequel to Coteries of New York.
Well, and it's nice to say, like we were talking about with Swansong, it's nice to see them doing more things that aren't like, as much as I love them, like a turn-based RPG or a hack and slash or a third-person cover-based shooter, you know, like, that's not really what some of the World of Darkness stuff should be, as kind of an outsider looking in. I like the idea of this being like the werewolf game. You're trying to find your family origins out in the middle of nowhere in Europe. You know, there's a forest that's rumored to kind of be the stomping ground of the werewolves that are part of your family line. Like, yes, that's cool. I want to go do that. Like, yeah, I want to be a vampire investigator and kind of use my charm and my powers to manipulate the kind of these situations. Like, that's what I want to play, as opposed to like, here's a first-person shooter. Ooh, blood powers.
Like, take all the combat out of Bloodlines. Like,
like it would still be a really great game if you didn't have to do any of the combat stuff. Like,
yes, maybe even a better game.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But I'm excited to kind of dig deeper into that one and see how that goes. That's all I've been playing this month. So let's move on to RPG releases for July 2022. Rune Factory 5 comes out on PC on the 15th. This has been out on Switch for a couple of months, if not almost maybe the better part of a year here. Apparently runs pretty okay on Switch, but has some, you'll be shocked, has some frame rate issues. And previews of the PC version seem pretty glowing, of saying like, yeah, maybe the art style doesn't maybe make its way over super well to kind of a larger format. But the frame rate issues and the loading improvements have all kind of been cleaned up. So that seems like a cool game still. That much like Stardew Valley, I'm hesitant to start something like that for fear that would be the only thing I would play for the rest of the year. So let's stay away from that one for a while. Live a Live comes out on the Switch on the 22nd. I loved this on the Super NES when I played it. I don't even know when it came out originally. It was one of those like RPG-y, sort of famously did the Final Fantasy V translation back in like 94, 96, something like that. And it wasn't too long after that before someone did Live a Live. And this game is really cool. It is there's like 7 or 8 different episodes, and you can pick any of the ones you want to play, and each one plays a little bit differently and has kind of a different storytelling bent to it. It's really cool. It's a really, really neat game, and I have not played it in 20-something years, so I'm kind of curious to see how it holds up. Last but not least, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 comes out on the Switch on the 29th, which is... Yeah, I keep forgetting this is just right around the corner. And
unfortunately, well, fortunately / unfortunately, like I pre-ordered the special edition on the Nintendo website, which does not get shipped out till like the end of September or something like that.
God.
So it'll be a little bit before I play it, but I'm excited in that they have job classes now.
I didn't know that. Oh no, my weakness.
Well, and especially for like Xenoblade, you know, they're all about I always forget the names of everything, but you knock them in the air, and then you topple them, and then you smash them. Like
yeah, there's like multiple like status.
Yeah.
Like I don't remember what they are, but yeah, you're like trying to put them in different states.
Yeah, like the key to that game is constantly doing that circle of statuses.
Yeah,
and you are always restricted in 1 and 2, and I assume X, which I haven't played much, by what party members you have gotten so far. So I'm hoping the job class thing alleviates that in 3.
Yeah. Those are cool games that I have never found the time to play, as much as I liked the very first one on Wii. What was that one? That's just Xenoblade Chronicles?
Yeah, that was Wii. Wii.
Yeah. I liked that one a lot. I never finished it because it is impossibly long. And I ran out of steam at some point. But those are cool games. Like I'm still super happy they're still making those. Those are great. Let's move on to news stories. Let's start with Not E3 2022. We got a couple of pretty good pieces of RPG news here, starting with Final Fantasy 16. Summer 2023 is the final release date, at least for now. I'm assuming if you're listening to the show, you have probably seen that incredibly cool trailer they released with the like chanting, singing of all the summons names, and that trailer is really cool. There's been some info that's come out recently that a lot of the Final Fantasy 12 and Final Fantasy 14 development team are the ones that are heading up this one. And some people that worked on Devil May Cry are also working on this. So it seems like it has a very cool lineage here. And there was a big set of interviews a couple days ago, and the director said that it is not an open world game. It is kind of a larger area game, but they said they want to tell a really big story. So to do that, you can't have a really big world, because you only have so much time to make the game, and you know there's not 7,000 people working on Final Fantasy 16. So I don't know. That's cool. That seems like everything I see about 16 seems like it's pretty neat, and I'm very excited to play it. I should probably finish 15 at some point too. Maybe I'll play that leading up to 16.
You know, 15's good. Like, it's not a perfect game by any means. Like, there's And you know, my whole attitude towards it comes before all the myriad of patches that fixed everything
Right.
initially wrong with it.
Yeah, and all like the
But
DLC side stories they have and all
yeah.
that stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
it's cool because the DLC stuff all like plugs into the main quest, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah, they
Um,
integrated it all together. Yeah.
and I think they changed the ending because I remember making a comment about the ending to my coworker, and then he's like, "That didn't happen." I'm like,
You're like, what did happen?
"Yeah, like it
That's
was
what?
my ending was a pretty big downer." I don't. Well, anyway,
Oh,
um,
interesting. Yeah,
but that
I should probably get to that and set it like again, like set it on the easiest difficulty and just kind of like motor my way through it.
yeah,
Um,
like if you don't do all the side quests, like it's a pretty quick game.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
especially for a Final Fantasy.
right. Next up is Outriders World Slayer. That's out now. This is Outriders' first full expansion. Seems to be like some new villain and kind of an icy part of that planet. I really would love to play Outriders, and I just have not gotten around to it yet. And I love what People Can Fly makes, and this seems very much up my alley of like a third-person cover-based shootery powers thing. I have not gotten around to it yet. So hopefully it has been good. I haven't heard anything negative about it, so I'm hoping the Outriders fans are eating pretty well right now. One Piece Odyssey is coming out sometime this year. I really don't know anything about One Piece. I know it is this monumentally huge work in either the manga or the anime. But I think when you look at the footage that One Piece Odyssey has out there already, it kind of looked like a standard kind of Dragon Quest RPG sort of thing. And I think that seems like a really cool idea. I think much like the Naruto games, when you look at One Piece, it's like, well, I mean, he's got the stretchy, bendy arms. You got to make it like a beat 'em up game, right? And it's like, well, no, I think you could do some cool stuff with, like a turn-based RPG. So I think that looks really neat, and it very much looks like the anime, which I think is pretty incredible. So 2 thumbs up. Soul Hackers 2 comes out on August 26th. Atlas has been putting out like a lot of little pieces of info, not nearly like the torrent of info that came out for SMT5, where it's like every day we've got a new demon for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
A lot of what they've been focusing on have been like the cast and the English voice actors, and not a ton at the time of recording about gameplay, but it's Soul Hackers, so I think you kind of know what you're getting into when it's not a Persona or SMT game. I think you're kind of getting a pretty standard Atlas game at this point, which is very exciting. I think this is still coming out on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Series consoles, and all that too, which is nice to see Atlas putting more stuff out than, hey, it's just the Switch, because that has been a bummer lately.
I'm very thankful. Like I think I got the PS5 copy, which I don't know. I've been seriously rethinking my love of collector's editions this year. Like,
yeah,
I managed to snag one of those, but it's also like, great, now I can't get this from Best Buy or Amazon, so I'm not going to have this game on day one.
Right. I need to play
Which
the waiting game.
realistically, where I'm at in life, I may not even have had time to play it the first day anyway. It's still annoying, and it was also incredibly expensive.
Yes.
It was not a good financial decision on my part, but
you're amongst friends. That's okay.
it'll go on my, well, I guess half my shelf you can't see, but
oh yeah,
it'll go
that's
on
true.
my SMT shelf.
Next up, Diablo 4. They shared a long gameplay trailer, including the announcement of the Necromancer class returning. Doesn't look like Demon Hunter is returning. Blizzard, I'm pretty disappointed. My main class is not coming back. Pretty bummed about that. Also, I'm probably going to be the only person that does not like how this game looks, but I do like how Diablo 3 looks, and nobody else does, so that is just my lot in life. They also focused a bunch on endgame stuff, and they showed like a giant almost like Sphere Grid, Path of Exile kind of thing, and did not explain what it's about at all. So I genuinely don't know. I like Diablo a whole lot though, so I probably will just check that game out when it comes out anyway. But so far, a lot of what they've shown is, hey, here's Diablo. There's a new one, and it's not bad like Diablo Immortal. So as long as they keep the rampant microtransactions that Diablo Immortal have out of Diablo 4, I'll be pretty happy.
Does Diablo 4 have a release date yet?
I don't believe so. I think it was originally slated for this year, and I think it got delayed. Okay. And I think they're shooting for next year, but I think a lot of it is like, hey man, we're just still working on it. I don't think I've seen anything firm yet.
Yeah, I just want it to be on Game Pass.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to, because Microsoft will own Activision Blizzard at some point.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's kind of the terms of that deal, but yeah, should be. And even if it isn't, I believe they talked this time about cross-play and cross-progression for Diablo 4, which is great. Every multiplayer game should have that, and a large company like this should definitely have that. So that's nice to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Surprise announcement of the Microsoft Bethesda show: Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 Golden, and Persona 5 Royal coming to Game Pass.
Woo!
Also coming to Switch, PC, and PS4, PS5. So Persona 5 Royal is coming on October 21st. That will be a Game Pass PC, Switch, PS5 release. It's going to get a native PS5 release. I don't know why it's getting a native PS5 release. I think that's really weird, because I feel like it ran 60 frames already, but maybe it didn't, and my memory is really fuzzy.
I don't know. I think I beat it when on PS5.
Yeah, but that's just a PS4 version, so...
Right, but I mean, like, you can't make that game look better.
Right, like, I don't know if they're gonna... it might be native 4K, it might have 60 frames. I don't think they'll put HDR, because I don't think a lot of RPGs are. But it might pull more people into playing Royal, because it has a native PS5 version, which would be good, because Royal is very good. Again, if anybody's going to play Royal for the first time, please look up a quick guide about how to get the ending of that game and the new content. You need to get to a certain rank of 1 social link before a certain date. Do not play 50 hours of that game and realize, whoops, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's actually 3 social links. So
yeah, it's a whole bunch of stuff. There's a lot of non-spoiler guides about saying, like, this arcana needs to be to this level before this date. This one needs to be this level before that date.
Yeah.
So it won't spoil stuff for you, but go play Persona 5 Royal. It's very good. And then Persona 3 Portable is also going to be coming to Game Pass. I have always been a Persona 3 Portable defender. I think I like Portable better than FES. And I think it is maybe a faster way of getting into that game, because you don't have to wander around the overworld stuff, which I don't think was as interesting as Persona 4 and 5's overworld stuff was. So you just kind of pick the stuff you're interested in. I don't really expect them to do any updates to P3P in this. I don't expect them to make any big changes, which is okay. And then Persona 4 Golden. Both P3P and P4G are coming later on Game Pass. They don't have a specific release date at the moment. But man, if you haven't played Persona 4 Golden, the game is real good.
Yeah.
It's still has some, like all of the Persona games, it has some questionable attitudes about trans people, which is still a bummer. But they have not sort of culturally found a better way of dealing with that in these games, which thankfully in all three of those games are not huge facets of the game, but there are some small things where it's sort of like, that's not really, you can't really do that anymore. That's not okay. But again, thankfully not large parts of the game. But yeah, if you haven't, number one, very happy something Atlas is coming to an Xbox platform. Very happy with that. And also, if you haven't played any of these games, I think they're all really good. Persona 3 might be a little long in the tooth. The dungeon Tartarus can be a little bit of a slog if you're not used to RPGs.
Welcome to a procedurally generated 300 plus level.
Yeah, like it is a climb. So if you haven't played Persona games before, don't start with 3. Start with either 4 or 5. Both of those games are really good. 3 is very much an Atlas dungeon crawling RPG. But
yeah, 3's really good. You just got to use a different. Whereas like a normal RPG, you're like, I want to check out every corner of the dungeon. In 3, you just got to be like, okay, to meet my goals, I have to get through 10 levels tonight, and I can't explore every corner.
Yeah, I just gotta keep on motoring. Yeah. So all of that is very exciting. I'm very excited for more people to be able to play the most recent Persona games.
Hey, in P3P, they took out the tired mechanic, didn't they? Or is that still there?
Oh man, that's a great question. I want to say that the deep recesses of my brain remembers something like that, or like maybe it's a little bit less punishing than it used to be. I think people should play Persona 3 Portable anyway to play as the female main character, because it's really cool. It's a really great run through of that game.
And it's, gosh, seeing the male characters show a completely different, sometimes really gross side to the female lead, I thought was very fascinating and educational, honestly. P3P
is great. I don't remember if it's the tired mechanic. I feel like you're right. There was something in P3P that made it the going into Tartarus less punishing. And I that sounds like the right thing, but I don't 100% remember.
Yeah, that tired mechanic in Persona 3 was rough, man. Like that
was
a hard
basically
game.
Like you're doing great, buddy. Get out of the dungeon. It's like, no, I still need to do things in here. It's like, oh, that's tough. Get out of the dungeon. It's like, no, please. I got the moon. Last game they showed off here, Microsoft showed off a fairly lengthy demo for Starfield, which, again, if you are listening to any video game podcast, you have probably seen the footage and seen people talk about it a whole bunch. Have you seen the footage for this, Musim?
Yeah, I skimmed through it. I may have watched I think I did actually watch the full thing when it came out, and then like, do we just want to be like maybe I shouldn't be that insulting. Do we just want to say No Man's Sky? No, that's you come here for actual opinions and not parroting.
That's been my real bummer about it, is it looks a lot like No Man's Sky, and I love No Man's Sky. I'm really bummed at people being like, oh, it's No Man's Sky with a budget, and it's like, I feel like you misunderstand the appeal of No Man's Sky to people like me that really like it. And also, No Man's Sky is like 1 of 1, so it would be nice of No Man's Sky to be 1 of 2. Like, it would be cool to have more games like this.
So
how are you feeling about this?
Right. So I'm a huge Elder Scrolls fan. Like, so Bethesda generally has me kind of on day one. On this one, I'm mixed. I've never been super fond of like hard sci-fi aesthetic where hey, the spacesuit is reminiscent of a real life spacesuit. I don't like that.
Here's guns and helmets and stuff.
Yeah, give me something a little bit more fantastical than but that spaceship creator looked excellent, and I love exploring Bethesda's worlds. Like, I did not care for, like, when Fallout 4 started, I was like, oh man, this seems like it's going to be a really cool story. And then there's that moment where your character finds the thing they were looking for, and that immediately destroyed the main story for that game to me. And
Right.
I just kind of wandered around.
Right.
I don't like, so No Man's Sky is a game I always like. I've enjoyed the moments I've played it, but it has never like grabbed me.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's going to do it for me. I'm not going to buy a physical or special edition of this, and since it's on Game Pass, it's kind of a no-brainer. But I I feel like part of the backlash is that Skyrim was so ridiculously popular,
Right.
and also a decade ago that we're now the contrarian faction that's against Bethesda is now
Right.
larger. Or that may just be my one friend who hates all Bethesda games. But I don't know. I wish they had updated the facial animation tech. Like,
Yeah.
the graphics look really cool. I like the idea that like a chunk of the game is not procedurally generated and a chunk is, and I wish they would come out and kind of explain that more rather than say there's 1,000 worlds in this. Like,
yeah, because they're like, there's 1,000 planets. I'm like, that's not always a selling point.
Yeah, like like No Man's Sky is like the gift that keeps on giving, because when that game first came out, everyone was like, well, this is clearly you have X amount of type of alien limbs that you're just
right. Yeah, you're like mushing
and,
on. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, we have X amount of games, and they slowly added more and more and more to that, to where now it's just one of the most vast games out there from the sounds of it.
Yeah, it's really, No Man's Sky is very big.
Yeah. I'm interested to see, like, I don't know how big the studio is that made No Man's Sky. I know they started out fairly small.
It's like, it's usually like 15, 20 people.
Yeah, like, I feel like No Man's Sky is going to have a leg up on this, honestly, in terms of content. And I'm just interested to see, like, you have the Bethesda factory of their 70 to 100 people that make, the Elder Scrolls and Fallout games.
Right.
Like, how do they compete against this 20 or 30 person team? Because in the past, the 20 or 30 person team would always, kind of lose. And I think they have so much stuff in No Man's Sky that there's, like, I don't know how. I am glad Bethesda's making a game in this genre. I don't know how they're going to make it as good.
Right. And I think the thing that's interesting for me is I kind of hope that it almost doesn't try to compete with No Man's Sky, because I think the thing to me that I really click with No Man's Sky is the exploration. To me, I'm like a space discoverer, and I'm discovering these new worlds, and I do not want you to bother me with the story, because that doesn't really matter. And I feel like if you're coming to a Bethesda game or anything, it's usually not always the main quest of Bethesda stories. It's all of the side quests and the factions and the kind of incidental stuff you run into. And that's the stuff that I think No Man's Sky doesn't do at all, because it's not interested in being that type of game. So I think it's interesting to kind of see two different approaches to this sort of same subgenre of, you have to assume that a Bethesda game is going to feature a pretty well-told, kind of heavy storyline focus at some points, and maybe kind of focus a lot less on the discovery and kind of exploration side of stuff. Yeah, I'm... oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to diverge topics if you want to make your point.
Yeah. I'm really torn on Starfield, because I feel like this is a type of game that I usually like. It's like a cool kind of spacefaring exploration story-based thing. Like, that's usually in my wheelhouse. But for me, Bethesda has had so many misses for quite a while.
Yeah.
For me, largely since Skyrim. I don't think they have gotten a game that has really done it for me. And I think a lot of the stuff they're showing kind of just looked like a Bethesda game. And I think we were talking about Final Fantasy 16 and me being like, yeah, this looks like a Final Fantasy game. I'm in. You know, like, I can't fault people for just being like, I love Bethesda games. It's a Bethesda game. It's going to be my game of the year. And it's like, cool. Like, I'm super happy that people are really excited about it. But for me, I don't think it really looks like it's doing anything for me. But I think this is like the best example of a Game Pass game, is this thing that, like, I will absolutely not spend $70 on Starfield to check it out for a grip of hours, but I can use my bandwidth to download Starfield and check it out for a handful of hours and figure out. I have more time than I have money, so I can check it out and just be like, yeah, man, you know, it's still a Bethesda game, and that's not doing it for me, or yeah, then maybe this one breaks the mold a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like,
yeah.
Nothing about that trailer makes me want to spend actual money on it, but I
Mm-hmm.
will for sure be downloading it day one. Like, it's the aesthetic doesn't grab me, which kind of hurts the trailer the most.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, you know, I'm not really the type of gamer like where we're a game like No Man's Sky loses me, is like I'm gonna go out here and mine stuff for hours type of
Yeah, yeah.
person. And where Bethesda stuff, like usually, you know, an Elder Scrolls game grabs me is, oh, I'm gonna walk this way. I'm gonna meet this faction. Oh, I just got turned into a werewolf.
I found an underground cave that turned into a dungeon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like there's lots of like interesting, cool lore and whatnot, and it's
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's gonna be partially dependent on how much they put in there. I know they did Fallout without magic, and I'm wondering how they're going to differentiate this game from like a Fallout or an Outer
Mm,
Worlds.
right.
Because they aren't going
Right.
for the humor of the Outer Worlds. But if you gave me an Outer Worlds game that was a bit more freeform with more
Mm-hmm.
factions in it and things like that, like I would love the heck out of that thing.
It sounds like a good combo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just don't know, man. And
Yeah.
you know, Bethesda doesn't. I feel like they. I've been a fan of Bethesda games since Arena in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like since like I think I started playing those in 95 or 96.
Right.
And I remember Daggerfall, their procedurally generated game, and I know it's a completely different team now than it was then. And
Mm-hmm.
like that's kind of the big moment in Bethesda's history, if you aren't aware, is like most of their crew quit after Daggerfall, and Morrowind was like a Hail Mary where they tried just a bunch of weird stuff that
Right.
they're never going to take the chance on again. But they took those chances because they were so close to going out.
Right.
Um, and I don't know that Starfield just feels like in a way it feels big and expansive, but it also feels by the numbers, and I can't fathom it possibly doing something No Man's Sky isn't already. Um,
Yeah, like, for better or for worse, it seems like a Bethesda game.
yeah,
And, like, if you love that sort of, like, zoom in the camera to the character speaking directly at you, and here's a dialogue tree, like, I'm not gonna yuck anybody's yum for that. Like, I talked about, you know, part of the forest in the first. I'm still playing Final Fantasy V. Like, I'm not gonna throw
yeah,
stones here. But it, it it was my hope with Starfield, and it's still my hope with Starfield, that when Bethesda takes a longer time to work on this game, and I have these expectations for Elder Scrolls 6 too, that if you take a longer time for this, and especially with Starfield, where you kind of start another game that isn't Fallout or Elder Scrolls, I kind of have an expectation that's going to do something big and different.
yeah,
And I'm, I think part of my disappointment has been, yeah, that looks like a Bethesda game, you know, like, and that's good and bad. I was hoping for there to be something not revolutionary, but maybe a little evolutionary.
yeah. That probably is part of the. I think that's exactly right. Like it doesn't look like a big enough. Like graphically, okay, sure, the graphics look infinitely better than
Yeah, I mean, it's
anything
gonna
else they've
look
ever done.
good. Like,
Yeah,
that's where your money's gonna go.
but like the rest of it, I'm not. convinced it's going to be anything different, and I'm not convinced that this new setting, especially with their kind of hard sci-fi approach to it, is going to have anything in it that really captures my imagination. And I would love to be wrong. I would love to, oh wow, here's a Blade Runner planet, you know, like
Sure, yeah. It's like No Man's Sky when you run across a machine planet where you're like, what am I doing here? This is incredible.
Yeah, I didn't even know that existed in No Man's Sky. I really need to give that game another chance.
No Man's Sky is in a very good place right now. They just keep every patch. They're like, all right, here's 15 new planet types. Here's hundreds more animal types. Now you can build mech. Now you can build underwater bases. Now you got crazy stuff now. So
you know, and cool. I know I shouldn't hold Daggerfall against them, but gosh, you'd take a side quest into a dungeon, you would enter the dungeon, and the exit would be gone because it procedurally generated the exit in a place you couldn't reach.
Right. It's like the kind of very old school procedural generation where it's like, we're trying our best, and it's like that you need an exit. Like just you need all the parts to interact with the level.
Like, I know that was over 20 years ago, and it's not long enough. I do not trust
you still have the scars, yeah.
I do not trust them to do procedurally generated content. And honestly, their authored content is what I come to them for anyway. So, like,
sure, yeah.
To me, that's kind of I've liked plenty of, like, procedurally generated games. Like, I mean, I haven't talked about Warframe on here for months because I haven't played it, but you guys if you've listened to this podcast for more than a couple years, you know I was massively addicted to that game for years. Right. And that is entirely procedurally generated. And
that's true.
Did an excellent job of, you know, not Bethesda, I forgot the company's name. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Point being, I have liked procedurally generated experiences before. I don't want that out of Bethesda, but you know, with Game Pass, they'll at least have the opportunity to change my mind.
Right.
And honestly, I feel like most of these, like, I'm trying to think if there's ever been a Bethesda game where I was going off of more than the hype of the franchise, because I feel like none of the trailers, except for possibly Skyrim with that epic song, like ever really grabbed me. Like in terms of that, it usually was just, oh cool, I have this. And in the Elder Scrolls games, you have magic, and I think that's always been part of my disconnect with the Fallout games, is I've always kind of wished for a little more fantastical things in it.
Yeah. It's way more grounded than something. Yeah.
And this game will be even more grounded.
Evidently.
But I guess we'll see. That spaceship builder looks amazing.
It's a cool idea.
And I know No Man's Sky did it too. I don't know what No Man's Skies look like, but
you can't really build your own spaceship, but you can kind of like put more. The thing I like, I don't want to talk too much about No Man's Sky, but like part of what I like about No Man's Sky is like it starts off as like a crafting mining sort of game, which I really don't like that genre. But very quickly you can invest that stuff into making sure you don't have to do that stuff anymore. So like you can outfit your ship with solar panels so you don't have to refuel your ship anymore. It just does it while you're out exploring. It's like, okay, I will craft cool to make sure I don't have to craft anymore. Like those are the sort of improvements you can do on your ship, where it's like you can't really build it, but now I can go 300 more light years in a jump. That sort of thing. So
like if Starfield gives me the ability to arrange and plan out and strategize my ship and then populate it with really cool companions so I can have kind of a Firefly, Star Wars, what have you experience, then
that'll be the good stuff.
I'll be in love with that. I don't have confidence in Bethesda's ability to do that, though.
Yeah. And thankfully we don't have to wait that long, because it comes out in March, I think, next year.
Yeah.
So it's not that long to go. 6-9 months. So next news story here, Dragon's Dogma 2 announced. As the internet's sole Dragon's Dogma lover. I'm kidding. Everyone is coming out. All my Dragon's Dogma fellows are coming out of the woodwork now. Dragon's Dogma, the first one, is like one of my games of the generation for the 360 generation. And it's been on sale for like $4 lately, which is very good. I'm really excited for Dragon's Dogma 2. That is a sequel that I was 100% sure was never going to ever happen, because the first one is beloved and sold pretty much 0 copies. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of news to go on. It's essentially like the team that made the first one is largely back. Like the director, and then like the Monster Hunter guy and the Devil May Cry guy are back for these games, or for this game. And they're working on the RE engine, which is the same engine that Resident Evil runs on. Fun fact, RE engine does not stand for Resident Evil engine, which is baffling.
Did not know that.
Yeah, it's really weird. I don't remember exactly what it stands for at the moment, but it is not the Resident Evil engine, even though they made it for the Resident Evil games. It's Capcom. They're wild. So I'm excited for that. I like Dragon's Dogma a lot. I'm very excited to see what a cool, big, open world, monster climbable Dragon's Dogma will be on kind of modern, current gen systems. And last news story we have here, Final Fantasy VII 25th anniversary video/stream number 1. Didn't realize it's been out for 25 years. That is wild. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade is out now on Steam. It is Steam Deck supported. That's Final Fantasy VII. Intergrade is Final Fantasy VII Remake plus the Yuffie DLC in one nice little package. If you haven't played Final Fantasy VII Remake, you should. It is way better than it had any right to be. As someone who came in ready to hate it, I came out of it really loving it, which is still a wild idea. They covered a bunch of Final Fantasy VII mobile games. There's like 3 or 4 of them out there. I'm not going to cover them. They announced Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, which is a remaster of the PSP game, now with full voice acting and rearranged soundtrack. Comes out PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Series consoles, and Switch. I am really happy about this because not enough people play Crisis Core since it came out on the PSP, and as we all know, playing, as much as I love the PSP, playing stuff on the PSP was not always the easiest. Crisis Core is really cool. It is a prequel side story, sort of, to Final Fantasy VII. And it is it is a real wild thing where you are, in battles, you are usually spinning a slot machine to determine what attacks and spells you have, which is really great. It's a really great game, and I'm very happy they're gonna do a remaster, because I'm hoping more people will play it, especially since it loops into Final Fantasy VII Remaster pretty well. Yeah. And they also announced Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, essentially. That's coming out winter 2023 for PS5 only? Question mark. They didn't announce this as part of a Sony stream or anything, and they just said winter 2023 PS5. So I'm not sure. But if you have played Final Fantasy VII, you will know what all of this means. If you have not, I will not be spoiling for you, but the majority of the short trailer they showed was Cloud and Sephiroth wandering around for a little bit, sort of in gameplay out in the world, and the questioning some fuzzy memories, and very largely hinting at what's going to happen at the Final Fantasy VII scene, the big scene. So I'm assuming we will get that answered in this game. They did also announce that this is a trilogy, sort of as we suspected, and did not announce a name or release window for the third one, and was largely like, hey, don't worry about it, which is not unsurprising if this next one is coming out in, 18 months. Like, it's a while. But I don't know. I'm real excited for another Final Fantasy VII. That first one was wild from front to back, and I think the most exciting thing about these remakes is that I genuinely don't know where this game is going to go.
Yeah. I hope it gets weirder and crazier, and I hope I actually make myself play through Integrate before then, because when I sat down to play it, it turns out I'd forgotten all the controls, and
Yes.
they are way harder to go back to than I remembered. So.
Yeah, I started that Yuffie DLC, and they're like, well, you played this before. You're playing this right now. Don't worry about it. It's like, I need way more help than that. I don't... yeah, so the PS5 version of Intergrade is, I think it's 60 frames in 4K, so I before this comes out, I might kind of dip back into the intro of Final Fantasy VII Remake and kind of play through that Yuffie DLC here.
Yeah. At
some point, but
I really hope they don't transfer your save, because I have not done everything in it, and I don't want to do everything in it before this one comes out.
I finished that game, and they're like, all right, go back and start 100%ing this game, and I was like, I don't want to. I really like playing this game. I'm not going to play it on hard mode. I'm not going to do all of this other stuff. That sounds like it's not going to happen.
I tried hard mode, and then I got to the motorcycle levels, and I was oh, right. I hate these.
Right.
And I'm never going to beat them on hard, so...
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. Well, yeah. If you haven't played Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's very good. You should definitely go play it. If you like Remake and you haven't played Final Fantasy VII, the original release, you should also go do that. They are different games in kind of startlingly major ways. I'm also really interested where they're going to end the second game. I have no idea. The first game was just like, oh, well, that's, I mean, you gotta finish it up at that point, and the game did.
Yeah.
But I don't know where you finish the second game out.
Yeah. I guess the rebirth hints at the Genova rebirth thing, right?
Yeah.
But there's so many different variables this time, and there's one variable that they kind of, I feel like they're showing their hand on in the trailer with, that voiceover.
Yep.
So will any of it happen? And if it does, like, how do they make the third one in the trilogy sound exciting after this,
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
This is a wild thing.
I'm definitely curious.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of those few games that I'm going to go into where it's like, all right, I'm scooping it up day one. I'm going to be preloading it. Like, this is definitely me setting aside some time to check this out when it comes out. Which is, as someone who has soured on Final Fantasy VII over the years, that is genuinely surprising. All right, but that's all of our news stories for this month. It means that's the end of our episode. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. You can visit us at pickingupthepixels.com. Everywhere to find and follow us is on the right-hand side of the page. Also follow us on Twitter, Picking Up Pixels. Join the Discord server. You can go to discord.tvgp.tv for the direct link on that. Patreon.com/E1M1. The ones are numbers we talked about before. Support us financially if you're able to do so. And Musum, where can we find you online?
You can find my band at axis-band.com, and that'll take you to all our Bandcamp and Spotify and all that. You can find my personal music at musum.bandcamp.com. That's MUSIM. And you can find me on Twitter at John Musum. That.
At that one. You can find all my shows over at e1m1.com. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you all next month. Bye.
Bye.